What happens when a massive Apache patrol surrounded his house for the favor he did to their daughters? Witness this unbelievable, true inspired story right here in Whisper of the Past. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share where you're watching from. Let's get started. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the small adobe house that stood alone in the vast desert landscape. It was the spring of 1872, and Thomas Jeffords sat on his weathered porch, carving a piece of wood with methodical precision. The former Union soldier had made this unforgiving land his home after the war, choosing solitude over the crowded eastern cities. He ran a small trading post and helped maintain telegraph lines across Apache territory, a dangerous job that few men were willing to take. Thomas had learned something that most white settlers refused to understand: respect. He had taken the time to learn the Apache language, their customs, and their ways. While others saw savages, Thomas saw proud people fighting to protect their homeland. This perspective made him an outsider among his own people, but it had also kept him alive in territory where many others had perished. On this particular morning, Thomas noticed the dust clouds rising in the distance. His trained eyes immediately recognized the signs of approaching riders, and many of them. He set down his carving and stood slowly, his hand instinctively moving toward the rifle that leaned against the wall. But something told him to wait, to observe before reacting. As the riders came closer, Thomas counted at least 40 Apache warriors, their faces painted, weapons ready. Leading them was a figure he recognized: Cochise, the legendary chief of the Chiricahua Apache. Thomas felt his heart pound, not from fear but from the weight of the moment. He had met Cochise once before, briefly, during a peaceful encounter at a water source. They had shared a respectful nod, nothing more. The patrol surrounded his house, completely forming a tight circle. Thomas stood his ground on the porch, his hands visible and empty, showing no sign of hostility. Cochise dismounted and walked forward, his presence commanding absolute authority. The chief's face was stern, unreadable. Thomas Jeffords, Cochise spoke in Apache, his voice carrying across the silent desert. "You are the one they call the Redbeard who speaks our tongue." "I am," Thomas replied in fluent Apache, maintaining eye contact with respect but not challenge. What happened next would become a story whispered across the territories for generations. 3 weeks earlier, Thomas had been checking telegraph lines in a remote canyon when he heard screaming. Following the sounds, he discovered 2 young Apache girls, no more than 12 and 14 years old, trapped in a collapsed mine shaft that white prospectors had abandoned. The girls had been gathering herbs when the ground gave way beneath them. Thomas could have ridden away. Many men would have, fearing Apache retaliation for even being near their children. But Thomas saw only 2 terrified children in danger. He spent 6 grueling hours digging them out with his bare hands, carefully removing rocks and debris. When he finally freed them, both girls were injured. The younger one had a broken leg, the older had severe cuts, and was barely conscious. Thomas knew that taking them to any white settlement would likely result in their imprisonment or worse. Instead, he carefully tended their wounds with what supplies he had, gave them water and food, and then did something remarkable. He waited with them through the night, keeping them safe and comfortable, singing old songs his mother had taught him to keep their spirits up. When dawn broke, Thomas carefully placed both girls in his horse and led them toward Apache territory. He traveled for hours, leaving clear signs of his peaceful intentions, until an Apache scout party found them. Thomas had gently transferred the girls to the scouts, explained in their language what had happened, and then slowly backed away without asking for anything in return. Now, standing before Cochise, Thomas learned the truth that made his heart skip. Those 2 girls were the chief's daughters, his youngest children. They had wandered farther from their village than permitted, and their disappearance had sparked a desperate search. When they returned safely, carried by their own people, but saved by a white man, it created a situation unprecedented in Cochise's experience. "My daughters told me everything," Cochise said, his stern expression finally softening. "They told me how you dug until your hands bled, how you sang to them when they were afraid, how you protected them through the dark night and brought them home safely." Thomas remained silent, unsure of what was coming next. The 40 warriors remained motionless, awaiting their chief's command. Cochise continued, "When I heard a white man had my daughters, I gathered my warriors to rain vengeance upon whoever had taken them. But when I learned the truth, when I saw my daughters alive, because of your actions, I had a different purpose." The chief raised his hand and the warriors began to dismount. Thomas watched in astonishment as they started unpacking supplies from their horses. There were blankets, pottery, dried meat, corn, beautiful woven baskets, and handcrafted tools. They arranged everything carefully near his porch. "These gifts are from our people," Cochise explained, "but gifts are not enough for the life debt you are owed. The chief then did something that stunned Thomas to his core. Cochise cut his own palm with a knife and extended his hand. This was the sacred ritual of blood brotherhood, a bond considered unbreakable among the Apache. With trembling hands, Thomas cut his own palm and clasped the chief's hand, their blood mingling as the warriors began a ceremonial chant. From this day forward, you are my brother, Cochise declared. Your house is under the protection of the Chirichahua Apache. Any who threaten you threaten my own family. You may travel freely through our lands. Our fires are your fires. Our water is your water. But Cochise wasn't finished. He called forward his two daughters, now healed and healthy. They approached shyly, then suddenly broke into smiles and hugged Thomas, chattering excitedly in Apache about how grateful they were. The older girl placed a necklace around Thomas's neck, a beautiful piece made from turquoise and silver, a treasure of immense value. Wear this always, she said in careful English she had been learning. So all Apache know you are family. What transpired next became legendary. Thomas Jeffords became one of the few white men to live peacefully among the Apache. He served as a bridge between two worlds, helping to negotiate peace treaties and prevent unnecessary bloodshed. His bond with Cochise remained strong until the chief's death years later, and the friendship influenced decades of relations in the territory. The story of how Thomas Jeffords earned the protection of 40 Apache warriors spread throughout the Southwest. It became a powerful reminder that humanity transcends cultural boundaries, that courage and compassion speak a universal language. In a time of bitter conflict and mutual distrust, one man's simple act of kindness toward two frightened children changed the course of history in that region. Thomas never sought glory or recognition for what he did. He simply saw children in need and helped them just as any decent person should. But that single choice, made in a remote canyon with no witnesses, rippled outward in ways he could never have imagined, ultimately saving countless lives on both sides of a brutal conflict. This incredible story reminds us that our choices matter, especially when we think no one is watching. One act of kindness can change everything. Thank you so much for watching Whisper of the Past. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible, true stories from history. Share in the comments where you're watching from, and let us know what historical story you'd like us to cover next. Until next time, remember that history whispers lessons we should never forget.